Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Integrated Man Project podcast. Before we jump into this week's episode, I did want to share about an exclusive membership I'm going to be launching to help shape the Integrated Man Project community. If this is something you'd be interested in, where you will be co-laboring with me, sharing your ideas, giving input, giving me feedback, part of kind of this process of creating something bigger and better for all men, I would love for you to join. And if this is something you're interested, please reach out to me. Email me at integratedmanproject@gmail.com. You could also send me a direct message on Instagram as well, or on LinkedIn. I would love for you to reach out to me. I would love for you to be part of this exclusive group to help, again, shape and form this Integrated Man community. Because as you do this, as we share in this journey together, we're going to create a community of men around the world where we become more grounded, more adaptable, more resilient, and more authentic men. So come on and join. If you're interested in this, please reach out to me. And without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Well, welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of the Integrated Man Project podcast. If you listened to the previous episode with Sam, well, then this introduction will be just as good, if not better. If you haven't listened to the previous episode, this introduction will be also good, if not better, for the first time as you tune in. So welcome, Sam, to the show.
Hey, Travis. So good to see you, man. I'm so excited to do part 2 with you.
Me too.
That first episode was a lot of fun. And it was, it was more of an origin story. And I think today we're going to kind of get into some of the work that, you and I both are acquainted with,
Yeah, I like it. I feel like we're jumping into Marvel or something with the origin story, but this is exciting. And yeah, it was a great episode. In fact, those that listen, it did not take 3 years to do our part 2. Thankfully, it definitely took longer than 3 months, because when we did record it, we had all these hopes and dreams and plans to do it within 3 weeks. And that, we won't tell you how long it's been, but definitely less than 3 years, definitely longer than 3 weeks.
So I listened back to it, and what was so great is I realized I was 45 in that episode, and now I'm 46. So it's been since April, which I'm an Aries. I was born in April, and my 11-year-old is now 12.
Yeah, well, and I can relate. I was 39. I'm now 40, and my boys have turned 7 and 5. They were 6 and 4. So, here we are. I did make it to 40. I'm joining the club with you.
I am so happy that you're here with us, because as Carl Jung said, life begins at 40.
Yeah, I feel that I need to do, I think, actually an episode just about turning 40 and kind of just like random thoughts that I've been having. Maybe I'll tag you along on just ask me questions. I need to do that soon. But I agree. I feel being 40, a little preview for that episode, if it comes out at all. But little preview is, I think, being 40, I'm realizing I'm actually glad I'm 40 and not 20. I'll just say that. So for so many reasons, I'm glad I'm 40 and not 20. Anyway.
You know what? I think it's interesting, because this is something that I think most men fear, is this whole aging process. And, you hear these metrics of time, and as you're growing up. So you're the tail, I think you're considered an elder millennial.
Yeah. Or yeah, there's also a possibly being Gen X, depending on.
So
right?
Gen X.
What's the cutoff?
I think 82.
Yeah. So, but I feel like an elder millennial is more Gen X than it is millennial.
100%.
I relate way more to Gen X stuff than I do to like millennials, because it's like right there. And I grew up with Gen Xers, so that was more of who I hung out with was.
And
all my
know
close
what
friends
it is that, and I've had quite a few of these conversations about this. But what it was is that our formative years growing up were not influenced by the internet.
But 100%. I think that's the differentiating factor too, because it wasn't a thing really until high school. And even then it really wasn't a thing.
No, I mean, remember dialing it up and that wonderful sound? It's something that my kids will never know.
Mm-hmm.
And
AOL.
I know. And I bet the best was it came on a CD-ROM.
Yeah, you had to insert into your computer to get you'd get a free trial for like 30 minutes or something, 60 minutes.
Oh
AOL
my gosh,
dial-up.
we're dating ourselves so much, you know. And I was gonna throw in there like Napster, downloading full
Oh,
albums on Napster or
yes,
LimeWire,
Napster.
and
Mm-hmm. I
killing the
did that.
family computer
Yep.
with
Yep.
viruses.
All the malware and stuff on your computer. Yeah, oh yeah. It would take how long to download like one song?
Gosh.
Like,
Or if someone picked up the phone when you were trying to download it and you're just
yes.
like,
Oh,
oh
you're like,
no. I was like, dang it.
that's been like 7 hours for this one song. And it was a good file too. It was bigger. It wasn't an MP3. It was a wave.
Okay, we can talk music forever.
Sorry.
So
Anyway,
let's
yeah, okay. So the purpose of tonight's conversation, or today, whenever you're listening, is not my 40-year-old reflections, although I need to do that. And I think Sam and I will just do it because it's going to be fun.
That would be hilarious.
And maybe we'll do that really soon, actually. And but tonight is really diving deeper in. If you haven't listened to the first episode, go check it out. It's a lot of fun. We talk about a lot of things. But one of the things we do talk about is this book called The 7 Primal Questions by Mike Foster. And so that's what we're doing. This episode really is more a deep dive into what these things are, kind of why you should care, how they can be helpful to you. And that's kind of where we're going tonight. So without further ado, let's jump into the 7 Primal Questions by Mike Foster.
So Mike Foster is my coaching mentor. He has been an executive level coach for like 20 years. He's written several books. He has done executive level, both business coaching, so team building, organizational coaching, and then personal development coaching for 20 years. He started and founded a marketing company and sold that about 20 years ago, and then started to do, life coaching, and they moved into some of the corporate realms, utilizing, his skill set of both marketing and advertising, and then also his heart for just people to heal, which is amazing. And ironically, I came to know him because he's an on-site alumni. And when we talked about in the previous episode, I went to On-Site, which is this therapeutic workshop in Cumberland Furnace, Tennessee. And it was recommended me to my friend who was, Mike referred him to On-Site. So it's this full circle moment.
Yeah.
So, from the origin story, I hit my rock bottom in 2020. I've just been kind of rebuilding the better version of me, the more authentic version of me, the version of me that is more present and just proud to be here. And last year, I believe it was last year, Mike released his book, The 7 Primal Questions. My good friend was like, dude, you got to check this out. This is really cool. I bought the book. I read it in 2 days because I'm a voracious reader. And I remember reading it and just going, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And I was, and what I think I'm going to do. So the 7 Primal Questions. Now, Mike developed these questions from over 6,000 hours of sitting with individuals. So 6,000 hours. You're a therapist. You know what it's like to get those couple thousand hours for licensing. It's quite a feat.
3,000 took me 2 years to get licensed in California. 3,000 hours was about 2 years.
Yeah.
2 more years of that would be 4 years of, seeing people pretty regularly. If you're doing it, you're seeing a lot of people every week to get 6,000 hours. So probably 4 to 6 years for him is my guess, which is a lot. It's a lot of data.
It's interesting because when we kind of hear these metrics, we're like, well, that doesn't sound like that much. But when you put it in that terms, it's like, oh, this is, And what he did is he started out with like 50 different questions that are just kind of relatable to all of us individuals. And so he started kind of narrowing down, cutting back. And these 7 questions he found is what most people, couples included, were kind of subconsciously driving their actions, whether in relationship with their work colleagues, whether it was relationship with your significant other, your kids, or even your family of origin, or even yourself.
Right.
So he took all this data, doing all of his workshops and all that stuff. So he started compiling down, and he came up with these 7 questions. And when I read the book, I remember just like going, okay, this is something I can kind of get behind because this makes so much sense. You know, we're aware of all the personality, tests, the Enneagram, the Myers-Briggs, Strength Finders, you name it.
Yeah.
Beautiful work. Great stuff to kind of help understand who you are and why you do what you do. And I remember I was sitting reading the book and I was taking notes, and I just was like, I got to the end and I was like, oh man, this is really powerful because it's so simple. And, for you in your therapeutic work and your coaching work, that humans, we love to complicate wisdom and truth. And we do a really good job of adding a lot of other stuff that just is fluff. And so I remember reading the book and I was just like, oh my gosh. And I was talking to my wife, who's an MFT and a powerful individual in her own right. And I was like, honey, you got to read this book. I was like, this is really cool. So she read it and she goes, oh man, this is great. She's like, can I take this copy to the office so that when I start to see, when I see couples, I was like, sure, take it. She goes, because I think this is a really powerful tool. So unbeknownst to me, so he launched this book, and then I was mindlessly doom scrolling on Instagram, digitally coping, from escaping sometimes the mundane parts of my life. And I get this targeted ad and it's like, Mike Foster, 7 Primal Questions coaching program. And I'm like, what? Okay. I was like, okay. And it was like, take the quiz. So I was like, okay, I'm taking the quiz. I'd already read the book and I was like, I'm going to take the quiz, see if it's right on with, the info that I'm doing, and that I've read in the book. And then I was like, if you are interested, we're going to start beta. We're going to start a coaching cohort. So I took the email. I did a couple of the calls with the leads, and I was talking to my wife and she's like, listen, honey, I know you're really good at what you do every day, which I build houses. I'm sitting in the house that I built. So, or I'm sitting in the garage of the house that I built. And I'm like, all right. And she's like, you're so passionate about people and you really, truly care about the quality of how people are doing. And I was like, well, I've had so many people pour into me, like, it's just natural for me to do this. Yeah. And she's like, I think you really should make the investment and do the coaching certificate. And I was like, and I was terrified because, and this speaks to my primal question. So the 7 primal questions. So I jumped off the ledge. I joined the cohort. I was one of the first 20 coaches to be trained. We are still fully connected. We're continually doing new and improved trainings. We have coaches that are doing in couples work. We have people doing it in the corporate sphere because Mike, as a keynote speaker, has worked with companies like Dutch Brothers, Chick-fil-A. He uses it in a corporate team building setting too. So it's not just applicable for like the person, the individual or the couple. It is transferable. And so I started doing it. I started logging some of my flight hours, and that brings us to here, which is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. This is very exciting.
Oh, it's so cool. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of rattle off the 7 questions because,
and then we'll just go through like a little deeper in each one and what that looks like. And let's do it.
I can challenge anyone in your audience. If you do not fall into one of these questions, then you might not have a pulse.
True. Yeah.
And so
I'll see what emails I get after this episode.
Yes.
We'll see.
So the first question that everyone, like a lot of people ask is, am I safe? We go, am I safe? Am I secure? Am I loved?
Yeah.
Am I wanted? Am I successful? Am I good enough? And do I have a purpose? 7 questions. Sounds so simplistic, right?
Yes.
But this is the beauty of this work. How we use these questions and how we move through each one is that all of us kind of have this one question that kind of drives us forward in our actions, our thinking. And what we're trying to do is to answer that question with a yes. And when we answer that question with a yes, we're living in our authentic soul's purpose, or showing up fully present and authentic to who we really are, which is so powerful. So the funny thing is, my question is, am I safe? Questions 1 and 2 kind of overlap. So am I safe? Am I secure? The same with each other question. So am I loved? Am I wanted? So we kind of can be a blend of those. And we might have different, what we call scrambles, which is how we operate when we're in stress. And so the ironic thing is for me to join and to pay into a coaching certificate totally went against, like, am I, financially safe and secure? And my wife's just like, honey, you got to do this. And I was like, I was terrified. And so I pushed through that. And now I'm here and I'm just like going, all right, well, what a testament to answering that with a yes.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because, so question number 1 is, am I safe? And the big idea really is safety and protection. And so when we, am I safe people, at our best, we're like relaxed and we're at peace, and really our highest emotional needs are both safety, both emotionally and physically. So for some of us, I would have been considered a highly sensitive person if I was born in these days. I have suffered from biological anxiety my entire life, thanks to my grandma. Got that gene passed down. And, the emotional safety that I can remember as a kid of just being that nervous, anxious kid is like, I can totally see where that emotional safety would have, if I had that attunement early on, the quality of my internal world would have been so much better. And so, for someone who's like an am I safe person, their core fear is experiencing pain and not being able how to survive.
Yeah.
So it's that whole like survival, mentality of like, it's feast or famine. I'm not going to survive this next season. We're going to lose everything, which is kind of that scramble. It's what we call a scramble. So that stressful internal, process that we put ourselves through to just like go, how can I make this need? How can I be safe?
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting because what happens, and I never realized this until I started doing this work, was that in my question, am I safe? My gift is that I try and make everyone around me feel safe.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
this gift is like,
that's
awesome. My kids have a full refrigerator, like today was the first day of school.
Nice.
They woke up. I mean, I was first day of school for 7th, 3rd, and 1st grade. My 3rd grader was like, hey, Dad, can we have like chorizo breakfast burritos? And I was like, done. Got it. It's in the fridge. Everything was ready. I made sure that their morning was safe. Yeah. Everyone went to school. No tears. Thank God.
That's a huge win.
It was right there. It was close. It was close.
But you made it.
We made it. And so it's funny, like my whole life, I've just been trying to answer this question, am I safe? And really what it comes down to is when I'm healthy and I'm in that my authentic self, I can honestly go, yeah, I am safe.
And when that happens, then you could be, like you said, when you are able to answer that with a yes, I am safe, then you can give that gift of protecting and bringing safety to others, right? That's when you're operating out of that.
And it's weird saying that as a guy too. When you really think about it, it's not something a lot of us want to admit. And what's ironic is my mentor, Mike, he's a Q1 too.
Okay.
And so, and he's very open about it. He's talked about it. And it's fascinating because it's like, this dude's like 6'2". I mean, the dude's like an intimidating figure if you were to meet him. I mean, I'm looking up at him and he's this like nicest dude ever.
Yeah.
And so it's, that's kind of that snapshot of the am I safe?
I like that. Yeah. And the scramble again, for those that are, really the definition of that, at least how I'm hearing it, is when you can't answer the yes, you get stuck in the anxiety or fear or worry or depravity of that, and then do things to kind of avoid that feeling. Is that kind of what it is? Like doom scrolling or?
Well, it's like a hypervigilance.
Okay.
And so I think for people that are, am I safe? And let's just go into question 2, which is, am I secure? And because these two really, am I safe and am I secure? They have different core tenets, but it's kind of the same thing. So am I secure is usually, the big idea is like, you're secure in your finances. You're secure in your relationships. You're secure in your position or like whatever you're doing. And what you're trying to do is answer this, I am secure,
Right.
Instead of a question, like a statement of truth. And, for someone who has this like number 2 question of, am I secure? When they're at their best, they're generous, they're connected, their security is in their financial, standings or the quality of their relationships, their connections to their extended family, their partner, their friends, and their kids. And, it's funny because it's like the core fear is really not having enough of resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys fall into that. I mean, I do, there's, when you have 3 kids and you live in California, that's kind of
yeah. Yep.
It's a whole scramble, really.
Uh-huh.
And so it's interesting because the funny thing is, and I've worked with a couple guys that have this question, and what it is their gift to the world is that they're building stable environments.
Yeah. That's a beautiful gift to give.
Yeah.
Flourishing environments for everyone, And
you think about of some of the highest performers, they are continually building something around them to make sure that everyone is doing good.
Yeah. Yeah.
When they might not feel like, am I secure? Yeah. And for the Q2s in the world, they're, kind of what we call the scramble, primal avoidance is just, they'll fixate on hoarding as much material resources possible.
To kind of try to force the yes that I am secure, right?
Yeah.
Because it's in a way but it's anxiety driven in that state, right? If I'm doing that, I don't really believe it, because if I did believe it, I wouldn't need to hoard and hold things, right? Or control. I could actually let go to be generous, right? So it's kind of, so when you're stuck in your scramble, that's when that would happen, and the avoidance, like, I'll fixate. Okay. And then what's the kryptonite real quick? We didn't talk about that. Kryptonite is kind of like...
The kryptonite is financial instability. So like and we can use kryptonite, we can use the scramble. For me, am I safe? Like one of my kryptonites is surprises. And it's so funny because like, I know my wife loves surprises. I cannot stand them. It is like, I'm like, oh, crud. Oh my gosh. Like, what am I going to do?
Gotcha.
And it's like, you just get that sinking feeling. And so it's really funny because safety, anything out of the ordinary affects that quality, that inner peace.
Right. Right.
And it's a practice. It's a practice to just keep that muscle memory going. And so like the am I secure, it's like financial instability. It's like people losing their jobs.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Hours getting cut. I mean, I don't know how many guys or humans right now are just unfortunately going through a lot of this financial insecurity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's, those 2 top questions, the Q1s, the Q2s, we have very similar overlaps, but there are definite strengths and weaknesses in both of them.
Oh yeah, for sure. And definitely different too. And actually for you, going back real quick to am I safe, it makes sense, the anxiety too, right? Hypervigilant and on high alert, that's anxiety, right? That's fight flight. That's the flight mode of like, I got to be anxiously alert and hyper aware of everything around me, to people, to their emotional states, to just, everything. And that's the scramble. That makes sense. And I'm piecing this together in my head as we talk.
And you see it in person, when you're sitting with clients, when I'm sitting with clients, and the hardest part is sometimes it's so glaring to you and I as we're sitting with someone, but then it's like, you just want to reach through, the screen. If I'm doing a Zoom session, just like, you're good, dude. You're good. You're good. You're good. It's beautiful. You're alive. We're here.
Yeah.
You're going to get through this. And so it's really funny because then we kind of move into these like emotional centers, and it's very similar. There are direct correlations between Maslow's hierarchies of needs, the Enneagram, and so you kind of have like, and I would say I am a 1 on the Enneagram. You're a 9. That is the head triad.
It is. You're right.
8, 9, and 1 are the head triad. So when you move into like the third triad, those are like the 3, 4s, and 5s. So Question number 3, am I loved? This is like a heart center. This is an
Yeah, that's
emotional.
like a 2 or something, like a type 2.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, for people that fall into this question 3 of like, am I loved?
Mm.
Am I loved? Like, their big idea is that love is the oxygen for your life. So when you are not receiving the love that you have searched for so long, you start grasping and getting it everywhere else. This is where I see people with codependent tendencies.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And so it's interesting because for someone, they're kind of like, when they're doing their best, it's like nurturing, they're kind, they're loving, they're empathetic, and when they're not, they can be, self-abandoning. They can, search for scraps of love for wherever they can get it, whether it's, worth investing that time or energy or not, and a huge thing for, again, this is where the emotional need for someone who has this am I loved question is feeling known, feeling seen, and emotionally being connected to others. I mean, how many people do we know that that subconscious question is driving the bus?
Oh, majorly.
It's, and so, the core fear is like being dismissed, not being seen, and then their primal gift is really loving other people and meeting those other people where they're at.
Yeah. Which is great to see it when those people, those Q3 people, the question 3, when they're able to really embody that, because they do have a gift of it's this care and love like no other, right? Which I guess is very similar to like a 2, right? On the Enneagram, when someone's a healthy 2, they could really give away love, not to be loved or to kind of give them love to prove it, but to say they could really be generous, and they really are like the ultimate generous lovers, nurturers, right? That are really they are the epitome, and they embody that so well. So it kind of reminds me of that.
Well, and I'm going to say this only because, so my partner is a Q3. So she is an am I loved? Well, you know her. I know her. She's a dynamic marriage and family therapist who does nothing but show up and love people in their pain every day. And that's that whole gift to the world. For those people, they are I don't want to say they're the healers, they're the coaches, they're the guides, they're the champions of humanity, really. And it's this beautiful gift, but it's so easy to kind of like get into these when their emotional needs are not being met. They get into these, they keep distance, they self-isolate. And so, I have a couple of Q3s that I've worked through, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Your gift is really loving other people for who they are.
Yeah.
And so like, question number 3 is, am I loved? Question number 4 is,
that's a big one, right?
Am I wanted? Which is, it's so interesting because someone who has this question, when they're at their best, they just accept people where they're at. They just live in that beauty of every day, and just loving and seeing how amazing people are when, a lot of us don't see that. The hard part is when they tend to lose themselves in loving other, they lose themselves in the everyday, or they start giving away so much to everyone else that they forget their own needs.
Yeah.
They don't have boundaries with time, and then they're afraid to be excluded and shunned.
Yeah.
Which, as a recovering people pleaser and, codependent, I was like, oh man, I could see where my traits totally were in this. And I mean, I've worked with
a lot of these people. I've worked with a lot of these people too. That drive to be accepted and wanted, and I've seen it where I look at the avoidance on the other end. It's like, oh yeah, I see that too. Just kind of isolation and wait, rather than actually engaging and doing what they truly need. And that fear of being rejected is so powerful, like so powerful for some that I've worked with, that it renders them kind of stuck in the mud and not knowing what to do next,
And I think for people that have this question, this am I wanted, this primal need, really, that rejection is so painful. And
Oh, yeah.
it's not just it's not just a question of like of being rejected, but it's like being shunned, being excluded from the group,
Yeah.
not being, this am I wanted, their gift really is to open arm
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they do that out of this subconscious idea of just like going, okay, I'm accepting who you are. Can you accept who I am? And then the sad part is that where we get into these conflicts is like someone might have a different primal question, and they might be trying to, they're trying to answer their yes with
Mm-hmm.
your yes. And
Yep.
then there's conflict, and I find too with the people that am I wanted, they've never been affirmed and answered that I am wanted. And so it's easy to go, I'll be the person you want me to be.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So to morph themselves to be accepted. And I could maybe even see some of these people, maybe definitely staying in relationships that are not really healthy or effective for them, because whether it's a romantic relationship, friend relationships, work relationships, I could see them kind of changing themselves to force acceptance because the fear of being alone and rejected is so powerful that they like, that can't happen. So I can't really be me either. So I could see that kind of cloudedness come in.
Oh yeah. And we all know, I hate to say this, but we all know that one person that stayed at the job way too many years because they didn't want to hurt the feelings of their boss. And I'm like, dude, like,
Right.
and I've told plenty of people, I was like, listen, it's admirable, it's beautiful, but you're not living in your true self.
Right.
Which isn't easy.
Right. It's not easy at all. No, absolutely not easy.
And so, yeah, it's super interesting. And
hey, bud, gotta go pee?
Yes.
Pause.
I love it. It's so great.
Yeah.
It's not like a bathroom break.
Yep. So intermission. This will be shortened, so those that are listening won't have to sit through the long. Oh my gosh, so loud. He's gonna wake his sister up. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go help him get in his bed.
I get it.
Not slam the door. I'll be right back. When you gotta go, you gotta go.
Trust me, man. I love it. I love it. I love it so much.
Dad life. We're recording a podcast. 9:00 at night. Kids have to go pee. So now, hopefully you enjoy the intermission, everybody. I hope you also took a bathroom break, unless you're driving in your car. That would be weird. But I remember my dad would have pickle jars in the car on road trips and say, here you go, buddy. And hopefully you figure out what I'm saying here. Pickle jar was the toilet.
You know what's really great? Because I have two older boys, is now I have and I'm this is not a plug, but they have a thing called the original pee jug.
Oh.
And it is a real gift for dads on a long road trip.
Okay. It's a pee. I'm guessing it's much more effective than a pickle jar.
Yes. It was developed by a long haul trucker. And I was like, I love this.
I'll have to check it. What's it called again?
It's called the original pee jug.
The original pee jug. I'll have to check it out. Okay.
It's awesome.
That should be good to have.
Dad tips.
No, dad tips. No, I mean, again, we just had the kosher dill pickle jars, that had the label off, and then just put the lid back on and stick it in the back, and next rest stop, dump in the toilet. So again, great intermission.
Perfect.
Now we're back. So hopefully you're feeling really wanted right now.
Yes.
Those that are listening.
Yes. So it's funny because those two questions, am I loved and am I wanted?
Uh-huh.
They show up in all of our lives, even
totally.
in certain times. And I think it's really beautiful because it allows, when I work with clients too, is this self-reflection of like, oh, I'm kind of falling into these characteristics and these traits of this time, or it could be a season, and so the next question went, and these last three are kind of a doozy for a lot of guys. And this is something that I find it's very interesting because it's through a different lens of like metric,
Yeah.
And so, question 5 is, am I successful?
Yeah, that's a big one.
And, for two of us, really the big idea is that success isn't measured by what you have.
Yep.
And, it's interesting because, I think all of us struggle a little bit with this as, a father, a partner, parent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because for me, teaching my boys too, and my daughter, I'm like, am I successful? And I'm always like, listen, if you're confident,
Mm.
which is kind of the snapshot of this, is like, are you confident? Are you focused? And are you improving on everything you're
Mm.
starting to kind of come in contact with? And having a seventh grader, we went to his after school orientation today. And the gentleman that leads it was like, listen, I don't want to know your reality at home. He goes, I want to know
Mm.
your hopes and dreams. And he goes, I want to help you guys become successful in the things that you want. And I'm sitting there on this picnic bench, and I've got my first and third grader with me too, because we all had to walk to the middle school. And I looked at this man and I was like, I don't know this person.
Mm.
And he is speaking really about what success is. And he's instilling it in these sixth, 7th, 8th graders.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is powerful stuff. And I literally looked at my son who's 12 and I go, what did he just say? He goes, he wants to know my hopes and dreams. And I was like, that is success. And he wants to help you reach those. And so it's funny because like that whole, am I successful? When we're not answering that I am successful, we're usually workaholics. We're overworking. We're trying to over focus on winning our achievements. I mean, you run the men's group.
I see a lot of that in men for sure. Big time, right?
And since you work with men a lot, and so do I, what's the biggest downfall of that question?
The biggest downfall.
What is the kryptonite of am I successful?
Yeah, not failing and not getting it, right? And whether it's the job or the promotion or the sale or whatever, and then
100%, right?
Downward spiral,
I mean, how many men do we know that, got laid off or made a mistake that maybe they weren't, honest with the mistake, or something happened, and it was company policy. Like, hey man, like, I'm so sorry. Like, we have to let you go, for that question. Am I successful? When we are kind of in that stressful, that scramble, and we have we fail at something, for most guys, we don't have that kind of language to be like, oh my God, like I failed.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
We do everything else. I mean, that's why workaholism. I mean, you name it. We just start going, oh my gosh, like, because we as men, we're never taught that it's just part of life and you learn from your failures.
Yeah. Oh, majorly. Yeah. And if you're not taught that, I think of those, and this is not everybody and this is not every parent, but I'm thinking of quite a few men that I've worked with and women too on this same vein, that, they're praised for their victories, and in some extreme cases, in perfection. Right.
Yeah.
And so
100%.
And anything other than 100 would be a failure. So a 99 would be considered a failure in the home, because the parent would say, well, why not get an A plus? Like, what happened? Versus, these are 95. Why not a 97? So they're always failing. They're never successful. And so they get stuck in this internal trap. And in this case, look at the primal question, is the kryptonite of failing. And so then they kind of work, trying to prove, and then might even, do things, lie, cheat, steal, whatever, to cut corners to ensure success.
And it's so interesting because that's part of, so we have these different layers to these questions. And like part of this question, it's what we call the primal avoidance. And so it's kind of where if you're kind of in that, you're not feeling that I am successful, you're looking for easy wins. You're looking for guaranteed success. You're kind of, you're like, I want to look like I'm successful. So you start like being concerned more about like buying the expensive watch, buying stuff to give the appearance of success.
Yeah.
I mean, and that is, how many people do we know that has been their downfall?
Oh yeah. Well, and then we have a society that pushes that too. So it makes it easy for them to even stay stuck in that downfall, right? In a way, we have a society that promotes that on top of it. So it's easy for those guys and women to, in a way buy into that narrative and get stuck and trapped and maybe get a bunch of debt too. I mean, you know what I mean? Like that could be the really dark end of it, is that now they have all this debt, and which causes more stuff, and they have to keep the facade up.
And you know what's so funny is like, so when I've worked with both men and women with this question, it's so interesting because their biggest fear is failure. It's like their downfall, but their gift to the world is they help everyone win.
Yeah, which is so beautiful when you think about it. And that's what they're missing out when they're stuck, because their gift is like an amazing gift.
Oh yeah. And it's funny because there's this great example in the Primal Questions book where Mike works with this guy who's had like a net worth of like $500 million.
Oh,
so, I mean, he works with really high performers, and he was am I successful? His company was successful. He still just couldn't answer that question.
Yes. And that's something else that you say that, sorry, is that these guys often, or women, they are, but they're in their head, they're not, because it's still the perfection. Like, it's like you're like, wait a second, look at all this stuff. Like, look at, you are successful, but the disconnect is so strong, like that ravine between actually be able to answer it,
And it's so interesting because like I've had a lot of different jobs in my life, and I've worked in custom home building for a really long time. And I've built some houses, because both my dad and I are contractors, and we've built some houses for clientele. I mean, these guys are so successful, yet they're just still constantly pushing that. And I'm like sitting there just going, man, I'm building you this like 4,000 square foot house, which is stunning. I mean, and I'm like, and they're going, well, do you think it's going to be good enough? And I'm just like, okay, well, clearly you can have it all and still not answer that question. I am successful. And it's, and that's the beautiful thing with like these kind of questions, because it's like you can reframe it and put it in new perspective for anyone at any level of success.
Well, and again, going back to them is like, and then we'll move on to the next question, is that these guys and women, they're stuck. The lie is that they're stuck, that they're measuring their success based on material things,
100%.
Often money or home or a job, right? Rather than who they are, like them, like their personhood, right? And that's where they get trapped.
And it's interesting because this is one that I parked cars at one time back in, my younger days. So I've had a lot of interesting jobs. And, which one that I always kind of in this question is, I would always see sometimes the one where it was like the guy trying to get the trophy girl. And then once he got that, he was like, well, I'm like this, I'm successful now because I got the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm great. Like, great. That's going to last 6 months. And you're going to, one day you're going to just wake up and just go, oh gosh, And so it's interesting because that, am I successful? It kind of leads to this question 6, which is, am I good enough? And it's so hard. And this one, it's an interesting one because I think to growing up in a religious system, a huge part of, and I don't mean this in any bad way. It's just sometimes we got the messages that we weren't good enough and we had to just keep earning, and it's funny because this, am I good enough? So much of what the big idea is that you're hustling for your value. You're kind of looking to be appreciated and accepted for all that you are.
Yeah.
And it's their highest emotional need is really having their uniqueness be fully recognized and valued for who they are. And it's interesting because this question, the question 6, which is, am I good enough? These are the people that create value for everyone. And I can honestly say, I see your contribution with the podcast, the coaching, you are creating so much value for this audience. And I mean, you're doing it out of your love and your compassion and just to help people grow into their most authentic self. And it's so interesting. And, it's like, you maximize what is, you see the potential in people, and it's that whole, am I good enough? But then when we're not getting this question answered, it's like, oh, okay. They're very self-judgmental. They can be very defensive. This is where that shame piece comes in, and for some of us that grew up in religious systems, sometimes that shame piece that we got told, like, you're not good enough, for some of us, we internalized that, and that kind of didn't allow us to step into our full, like, we are good enough question.
Yeah. Well, in reading this, because I've done a lot of work, I kind of relate to a few questions, but this one I see because I would, I'm a type 9 on the Enneagram, which links to a 3, which is kind of this good enough question. Although the core of a type 9, though, not that I'm bringing another personality inventory into this, is that, but the core of the type 9 is like this inner peace. And I kind of see it as a blending of like this, am I good enough with like, am I wanted? It's almost like a blending of a couple of these states, these questions. And so when I was younger in my 20s and like late teens, I think I found myself operating more out of self-judgment, a lot of shame, not enough, trying to prove my worth of being enough. And then also at the same time, trying to be accepted, right? And not being rejected. So I see that I'm kind of in these two camps a lot. Now that I've done a lot of work, I think I'm operating a little more out of the truth more often than not. But the one thing I tend to get stuck on, which stood out to me on the am I good enough, where I still get stuck, is not so much self-judgment. That's not really strong like it used to be when I was younger. I don't overperform like I used to. And the shame is definitely not as intense because I've done a lot of work around my shame narrative, which is good. Am I good enough? That's definitely my shame message for sure. And I've done a lot of work identifying that and realizing, no, that I am. But the one that comes up for me is the defensiveness. I'll get that. And the thing that why I relate to this question too is if I look at the core fear, for sure I relate to is being thought of as negative, like negatively thought of or criticized. And that to me, I've had a lot of experience in my life looking back, and I think a lot of my core wounding has come from when people have made a judgment, often inaccurate judgment of me, and then I can't actually, and they don't want to listen to my side or hear me. And I've had a few events in my life, reflecting back, where there's been a few big ones where really wounded and in pain, but the person, there was no allowance for me to actually have just share, like, hey, here's my side of it and here's where I'm coming from. It's like there's a snap judgment made of me, and I couldn't defend myself, not be defensive, but I couldn't defend myself and say, hear me out, right? And that was really painful for me,
and I just tell you, like, I believe you, because that pain is so real. And it's interesting because, for this one, am I good enough? The real kryptonite for people that have this kind of core question is criticism.
Oh yeah, big time.
100%. And so it's interesting because too, this question, the am I good enough, is where people see themselves, I'm a victim of this life. I am, they shut down. They refuse to engage. And then sometimes they overcompensate of like, they come up with these elaborate defenses of like, it's because I did this and because of this. And, I think it's
proving all the points that like, here's why. Yeah.
And it's so sad because what it really comes down to is that, am I good enough? And I say this from a place of understanding family of origin stuff. It comes from a place of not being affirmed that you're worthy to be here and you're worthy of being in this family. I mean, I can, I've sat with a lot of people, both men and women, in this question. Yeah. And it's one of the most heartbreaking things to be like, you're worthy to be here.
Yeah.
And I've been working with a client who had a pretty traumatic childhood. And I had a session with him this week, and I just said, hey man, like, your gift to the world is that you're still here.
Yeah.
And I said, you're worthy of taking these breaths. And I am here with you. And I mean, my heart just, and it's so hard, as you, and too, when you sit with people in their pain, it's both an honor for all of us. And it's this terrible Shakespearean tragedy of like, you just love them so much. And yet you feel so much of their pain that you're just like, I literally told my client, I just want to give you a hug through this screen.
Yeah.
To let you know that you're okay. You are good enough.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a big one.
It's this one, and I see it a lot, especially with younger generational, people. And this is where I usually go back into like kind of do a little family of origin narrative. What was the family message? What was the message you were taught? What was it, both overt and covert? And that's a big one. And it's so funny because that whole good enough, it kind of leads us into this question 7, which is, do I have a purpose?
Yeah.
And especially now, especially in this, I don't know, I would say ever since 2020 and the COVID and kind of the shaking of the basket or whatever you want to, kind of waking a lot of people up. It's like this question, do I have a purpose? It's like when people that have this question that drives them, they're trying to answer this question. I am living my purpose. That is the question that they're trying to do.
Oh yeah.
And when they're at their best, they're forward thinking, they're visionaries, they're seeing new ways to help people, and create things that bring change, for all of us. I mean, you and I've been in this dialogue for a long time, and I've watched the transformation of both the podcast, the brand, the website, and even your work, and it's so interesting because you're creating change for especially, targeted towards us cisgendered males. And really that gift to us is just waking up, like helping us step into our soul's calling, our dharma, whatever you want to call it. There's many different words, but it's like what makes us the best version of us in our world.
Yeah.
And I see that with this podcast. I see it with your work, everything, and it's funny because really the big idea is to this whole, do I have a purpose, is to unburden yourself from the problems of figuring out your purpose. So kind of taking all that, like, what's my purpose? And when you start to live your purpose, you are creating the movements, you're making the world a better place. You are helping unlock other people's purpose, which is so cool. I mean, I love doing this coaching because when you watch a client and you kind of lay out, like for me as a coach, I can prescribe action items, and I can go, okay, hey, let's try one new thing. And we're going to do one new thing. And I want you to try and just write this down and give yourself 90 days, because 90 days is where a new habit and change starts to happen. And when I see that with a client, I'm just like, thank God, because they are becoming the person that they want to be, and they're starting to lean into that purpose. And it's really just that, it's those little shifts, and it's the core fear of this question is pointless work and meaningless toil. And we know that so well because we've all lived that question a few times.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yep.
I mean, I know I have, and
sure.
there's still some days where I'm just like, am I really got this purpose? Like, am I, do I have this purpose? And then I have to reflect on myself and just go, I do have a purpose.
Yep.
Sometimes it's not always clear, because we go through those periods of habituation where you're doing something, for a long time, and that spark starts to die. And it's all about reframing that, like, no, this is my purpose. And, and I always suggest to my clients, like, because a lot of them have, side hustles or whatever you want to call it. I'm like, you know what? Add something new or go do something new just to bring some of that spark back into your life.
Oh, totally.
Because it will bring that purpose back to the forefront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because really with this question, kind of where people get bogged down is getting caught up trying to find the right purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like trying to find the one in relationship, right? It's like, I had to find the right one.
Oh, right. I mean, how many times have you heard that?
Oh, big time. Oh, majorly. So many times. I got to find the one. I'm like, well, hate to break it to you, but yeah. So yeah, and those people, I think they're stuck in that. That's their question. Is the especially when that's their focus,
Well,
is the right thing, the
and
perfect thing.
I think it's interesting too, like with this one, like the Q7s in the world, which are the, do I have a purpose? They're the ones doing beautiful things, both social change, both trying to improve people's lives, in a meaningful way, because they're adding meaning. And so much they operate out of this place of like, I'm trying to find my purpose, so I'm going to help everyone else live their best life.
Yeah. And it's funny when I hear all these, not funny, but when I hear all of these questions, and it kind of reminds me, like the Enneagram, like when we're operating out of our best, it's all about like community and relationship. It's not about self. It's all about,
100%.
And if we go through like the gift, it's like am I safe is like able to make other people feel safe and protected. The am I secure people is they're able to build these environments, and then generosity, and the am I love people is they could care for others' physical, emotional needs. The wanted people is they're inclusive and welcoming and powerful builders and connectors, which I relate to that, the connecting and team builders. The successful people is the helping everybody win. The am I good enough is value making for others and maximizing what is and seeing possibilities, which I really relate to that. And then the purpose people is right. They create projects and movements that make better for everybody. So, which is always a beautiful thing. It's not about me individually, this one body, but about like us, me, like we, I think to quote Dan Siegel, muy, right? I think he just said that.
Oh yeah.
We, the dance, interconnected book. It's like, it's about our connection with each other and with society, with the world. And that's, I think, in the end, also where we find our purpose and meaning for all of those questions is that it's about, we give this gift away.
Oh
right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I do a lot of just individual work, but in couples work, I mean, I have a wonderful couples therapist that my partner and I have seen. And it's funny because where I see conflict with couples that use this, it's like, I'm a Q1, my wife's a Q3. She's trying to answer that question, I am loved. And I'm like trying to answer that question, I am safe. Well, when you have different relational styles and you have different relational questions, I mean, where do you just keep missing each other? So it's so beautiful because we all have a different question, and it's very rare for a couple to have the same question.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm a huge fan of Terry Real. He's a really beautiful, he's the creator of relational life therapy. And I read his book, Us, just recently. And it was so cool because everything I read now, I'm like, okay, well, like, how do I apply this, to what I'm doing? And even for a lot of us, our childhood questions, really, sometimes our childhood question is showing up slightly in a different variation.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And it's no different than in couples work. And in using the Primal Question for couples, it's moving from you and me to us.
Totally. Right. Yep. It has to move outside of self.
Yeah.
Right. Which in some way is a little, with some of what's out there, some of the rhetoric and social media stuff out there, that to some degree that's counter culture to some of the individual stuff that's so promoted often about my feelings, my truth, my my whatever, and which in the end is more isolating than not. Because what I see is that actually when we're able to fully give ourselves away in obviously an effective way, not when we're over giving to our detriment, because that's actually that would be, according to Primal Question, you're probably stuck in your scramble or your fear, right? You're not 100%. Actually operating in your true authentic self. It's the false, forced, whatever self, masked self. And so it's actually not really giving it away, because there's still this, you're not giving it because really you're hoping for something in return to actually fill you, rather than I can actually really give this away and be at rest and at peace and know who I am. And I think that is counterintuitive, countercultural to like what I see a lot of stuff out there.
Well, and it's so interesting because it goes for both couples work and then also parenting.
Yeah.
And it's as we, kind of talk about this renaissance of really showing up for our families in new, authentic ways. When you have like, it's interesting because like my oldest is 12 and I think he's got a little touch of the anxiety. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah.
I might have given
Mine
that a
does
little.
too, who's 7.
Yeah.
So
And
I get it.
it's interesting because like, with
Yeah.
my primal question, I'm like, oh man, if he's got that little bit, like I want to make sure he feels safe. So he's not trying to answer that question.
Yeah.
And and it's beautiful both as a gift to connect, but also I don't want to pass down my scramble or my coping methods or whatever, and it's interesting because when you two and I fully agree with what you said about some of the rhetoric in online presence or online spaces where it's like, you can have it all. And my favorite is like, yeah, you can have it all, but not all at once.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, moving from, a you and me to us.
Yeah. Well, especially in the parenting space, some stuff I see out there is like, it's like, yeah, you can't do it all. Like, there is more of a sacrifice on the parenting end. I don't care what you say. And if you're doing it the other way, you got it wrong. That's my opinion. If you're,
100%.
Like, yeah, that's probably a separate podcast conversation.
It's totally.
But side note, that's another one because it's just like at that point, if you make it about you, like, no, your kid's gonna learn that. Then he's gonna they're gonna take that on, that they're not important, that they're not valued, that they're not enough, that they're second. Now, I'm not saying to kill yourself over it, but you need to care for yourself as best you can. But at the end, you have to sacrifice as the adult, not the child.
It's so fascinating because we both have done so much soul excavation.
Yeah.
And we continue to do. And I mean,
oh yeah, I continue. Yeah.
It's so beautiful because I have an individual therapist I see. We have a couples therapist we see. Our coaching cohort. We meet twice a week, plugged in. And it was interesting because I always like to think this through, when you get married, you essentially marry your unfinished trauma because your partner reflects that on you. But marriage is solving problems that only two people can solve.
Yep.
And then when you start adding to that family, well, if you're looking at the family, this is you're encountering problems that your family has to solve. Yeah. And that is where you start to stretch and grow. And then you can also see yourself both as part of this organism or this system, but then also go, well, my job is to make my children and their lives not easy, but easier for them to tackle the problems that they're facing individually.
Right. Yeah.
In their world.
Yeah. Right. And then again, if you take it in the lens of Primal Question, you see that you can't give all the gifts away, which is why it's a system, but your gift has a direct impact on your spouse, on your kids, on your home 100%. Environment. And then so does your spouse's gift. And then and then part of the joy is we get to foster our children, like speak the truth into our children, into their gift set. And 100%. Notice when they get stuck in their scramble or whatever, that we could speak the truth of what they need to hear and kind of plant and water and nurture that seed. So it's like you're giving them that kind of gift and helping that muscle grow. And yeah, it's very much, it's communal, it's community, it's relationship. And the reason why this makes sense to me, it's like, I've seen so many people, I've lost count at this point.
Yeah.
I don't even know. It's been 10 years of seeing people, and I don't know the number anymore, easily over 1,000, if not more. And not one time have I had someone, unless they're a sociopath, and I've never actually worked with a real sociopath, but I know people have, but I've never had one person come in at the core of who they are, not have a relational wound of one of these questions or other ones of
right.
And at the end, it's about being connected in some shape or fashion. There's not one person that hasn't been true. And so the lie of making it about you and your needs first is like enticing in one hand. I think it's actually a fool's errand or a red herring, because if you take that to the extreme, you're going to end up in the same place with that relational wound not actually being answered or healed or addressed, because you just might mask it differently by this idea of this, it's about me and my truth and my thing. But behind that mask is still that massive wound that it's like festering and longing to be answered, like in the primal question answers, like longing to be answered in its truth, you know?
And I think it's so interesting because, you know, I've done therapy for 15 years. And I mean, I've been in therapy for 15 years. And it's so fascinating because my partner's, I mean, we've been together for 15. She got licensed like the year after we got married. So she's been doing therapy for 14 years. And when I started to come to this work, I remember just sometimes she would, you know, let me in on a little insight of like what she was, you know, some of the problems that she was working on, and with no names, no nothing, you know, full confidentiality.
Totally.
But it's so interesting because, and even looking at the friends of my youth, the friends of my college, the work colleagues that I've worked with, I now see how everyone carries one of these questions even at certain seasons. And at the core of it, you know, when you're living in and you are answering that primal question, you just get to be the best version of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is like a non-anxious, non-striving, non-shaming, non-critical, you know, place where you can be in tune, be at rest, find a sense of groundedness. You really get to embody like what love, I think, is, right? Which is really about giving away and willing and wanting the best of the persons around you. You know, when I look at all the primal gift, it's like that's what I see, how I see love. I mean, because love is more than one thing; it's a lot of things, but it's a non-anxiousness. It's a non-striving. It's a non-striving. It's really like this grounded, calm, connected, whole, you know, raw gift.
It's interesting because this is something that, you know, as I've been doing this work and seeing a lot of my clients, you know, and I always tell them, you've always been good. You always were good. You just didn't know it. And I said, all we're going to do is just build a little bit better you.
That's good.
And I said, what we really want to do is we want to answer this question, and we want to move you from a human doer to a human being.
Human doing to a human being. Human doer. I like that.
And that's when you are present, you're connected.
Right.
And you
don't have to strive.
No.
There's no proving, right?
And it's so funny because, like, for that whole safe thing, you know, taking risks for me is, you know, one of the hardest things, because it's like, it's a safety issue.
Sure.
And then it's so beautiful because, especially if you listen to the first episode, you kind of hear that backstory. And you
definitely go listen to it. Go back and listen if you haven't.
Yeah. And I literally, and because I was a human doer, and, you know, now I can recognize when I am a human being. And, you know, today was a perfect example. I took the day off from work because my partner is actually in Canada doing a therapeutic training. And I wrestled with taking the day off. And I realized I'm never going to get this chance to be present for my first day of school for my 7th grader, my 3rd grader, and my daughter going to 1st grade. And I remember waking up this morning and I was just like, just going to be that human being. I'm going to be that present dad. Sure, the money, it is what it is. I can always work more, but I will never get this moment of being present with my kids ever again.
Right.
And, you know, answering that safety question, like taking off work, is like a thing. And I just remember, oh my God, I just remember getting home after picking them all up today. And it was a half day, and I took them to the beach and I watched them play on the beach. And I was just like,
that's awesome.
I was like, this is the best first day of school I think I can remember.
Yeah.
That's success. That's safety. That's human being. That's
Yeah.
love. That's connection.
Yeah.
I'll never get it back.
Yeah. No, you're right. And it, if you're sitting there listening still, I hope you are, wondering, why should I care about another personality thing? Well,
Modality. We'll call it a modality.
Modality. Well, I think Sam answered it very beautifully, in his own way. Would speak to him that, he was able to be present and enjoy and not be in fear of financial security, but say, hey, I'll never get this back. And choosing that to give away his gift of just creating a sense of safety and connection with his kids, like that's the gift. And so I think the answer to that is like you really going back full circles, like you get to be fully authentic.
100%.
And so, if you want to ask, why should I care? Well, there's your answer. That's why. That's why you should care. It's because you have an impact on everyone around you. And if you're a dad, your kids. If you're a mom, your kids, right? And your spouse, right? Your husband, your wife, your partner, whatever. Like it's a direct impact. And so if we want to buy the book, the last 2 questions, or work with Sam, where is that? Where do we get it?
Okay.
How can we work with you?
You can get the book on Amazon, Mike Foster, or on the website, Mike Foster, Primal Questions Coaching. You can find me at sampowerscoaching.com.
Nice. Links will be in the description, by the way. Links below.
I have a very simple landing page. My social media strategy is
no strategy.
A little sparse.
Just kidding.
I'm staying. What's ironic is I'm staying busy, with coaching where I'm like, this is the most epic thing ever. And I'm going to roll out some more videos and,
It's okay. It's not all that it's cracked out to be. I'll say that right now. It's probably, you're better for it, Sam. You're
and I'm at people can email me at sampowerscoaching.com. You can find me on Instagram. I don't post much at Swami Powers. It's a play on my name. Swami's is also my favorite surf spot in San Diego. And then unbeknownst to me, I had to look up what the name of Swami was, and it was like wisdom holder. And I was like, wow, that's,
that's rad.
That's kind of rad. And and you can also find me on my wife's Instagram quite a bit at Chrissy J. Powers.
You can.
Because I always make some guest posts because she's the social media maverick. Yeah. So, but you can find me in those spots. Feel free to reach out. And I just want to say thank you so much, Travis.
Yeah. Well, before we hang up, wait. Last question.
Okay.
Last question, which I started with you, which is going to seem weird because of when I'm releasing our first episode, is that I've been asking this question. I was like, the music question, which I now do all the time. So what are you currently listening to? What's been hitting you this week musically?
Oh, well, I'm going to go and I go old school because I have iTunes. I still have Apple Music.
Nice.
Okay. So I've been listening to Hermanos Gutierrez.
Okay.
It's these 2 brothers that make this.
Hermanos. Yep.
Hermanos. Their newest album is called Sonidito Cósmico. So like cosmic sounds. And they're kind of like Crumbin, but if you were in Baja.
Okay.
Phenomenal, kind of vibey, really beautiful. And I formerly played a lot of music in my teens and my 20s and even in my 30s.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of years in piano lessons and I've played a lot of music. So I have a really diverse musical background, and I competed in the National Piano Guild for a decade.
Wow. Look at that. Who knew?
So I have this appreciation for like classical music, but I've been listening to those guys. Sleep Token, which is this kind of metal. I love heavy metal music. The Yosef Days Experience live album.
Okay.
Live in Malibu. It is a very avant-garde jazz album. He's a drummer, but he's a musician. And so for me, I played bass for a lot of years. So I have a real soft spot for timekeepers, but that are also musicians. Yeah. I've been listening to the album Charm by Clario.
Okay.
She's this songstress, amazing. Chaparral Run. I love her stuff. Battle Snakes, which is this like
we have an array of stuff you're listening to lately, man. It's just you have a range. It's so
My favorite thing is the Face Melt's playlist on Spotify.
Yeah.
They do a new one every month. I mean, the new King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard album, which is very Grateful Dead kind of mixed with the Allman Brothers. And if
I could jive that.
You know, like Humble Pie was like thrown in some tunes, because I am all over.
Yeah, no, I can tell. Very eclectic.
Hemlock Springs.
Okay.
Have you heard Hemlock Springs?
I have not.
It's like kind of 80s, like Cyndi Lauper dance music.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I
so
love
fun.
it.
Is it kind of fun? Kids dance to it? Is it kid fun? No?
I'm re-listening to Mezzanine by Massive Attack, the remastered.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I know that one. Yeah.
Teardrops. Every time I hear that song, I think of Jeff Buckley, because it's about him and when he passed. And then Barry Can't Swim.
Yeah, you gotta. It's like it's a journey over there. You know, it's just you're hitting everything. You know.
Oh yeah, and then like Proof. I love Proof. His album Horse. He's this white rapper. I mean, it sounds like if Beck did a bunch of PCP with the 3-6 Mafia, while the Dust Brothers and the Chemical Brothers were mixing the album.
Wow.
It is
okay.
It is phenomenal, and I have a background in recording.
Yes.
And so the way that I listen to music, regardless of the genre, every musician is telling a story. We just aren't always acquainted with those stories or those cultures.
Yeah.
And it's kind of our job, I think, for me as a musician, is to listen and go, wow, this is a powerful story. And I mean, and there's a lot of cheese out there. God, sure. I love some good cheese music.
Oh yeah, big time.
I mean, how's this? I just scored tickets to see Mariah Carey's Christmas tour at the Hollywood Bowl. It's my wife's like bucket list. And no joke, I was like, if my 20-year-old self, now, I mean, I mind you, I got nosebleeds.
Wow. Mariah Carey and the Christmas tour. That is, it's one of those, like, you don't want to admit it, but like, yeah, I could sit to that. And,
I am so unapologetic when it comes to, I love like Katy Perry. Yeah.
But specifically the Mariah Carey Christmas tour, like that's very specific. It's not Mariah Carey. It's Mariah Carey Christmas tour. So
do you know what?
I can't wait to see the videos you record. And,
I won't be recording any videos, but my wife will.
Yeah. Well,
and ironically,
on those.
Yeah. Ironically, the next live show we're going to go see is Ray LaMontagne and Gregory Alan Isaacoff. And so it's like,
I would love that show, but we're in Scotland, I think.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And
it is what it is.
And
shoot.
And the last time I saw Ray LaMontagne was the Hollywood Bowl.
I love that venue. It's such a good venue. I love the Bowl.
He played with the LA Philharmonic.
Philharmonic, yep. Yeah.
And
it's such a great show.
And even better is the openers were Blitz and Trapper, which I love.
I love Blitz and Trapper.
And then Jenny Lewis.
Oh, God. Okay. That's a great show right there. That's a great show. Great show.
So for me, my music's, I don't know. Some people are like scared when I was like, oh, give me the aux cord. And they're like, oh no.
Yeah.
So let me turn that on you. What are you listening to?
You know, if you're still listening at this point from, currently not as eclectic, I think, as Sam, I think right now, there's this, I also do like soundscape music. I like just to think. So there's a new record by Novo Amore and Endel.
I love
Novo Amore, but this is just it's music only. It's Novo Amore and Endel. It's called the Antarctican Dream Machine. So it's a relaxed soundscape, and it's like an hour long. It's not that long, but yeah, it's just kind of like movement music. I also like Liminal by Sigur Rós. I've been listening to that too. Their Liminal Space, right? It's just kind of just like movements and stuff and quiet. And then, I've been doing early morning workouts. And so obviously I got a workout playlist. So, a lot of Rage on there. Rage Against the Machine's been hitting hard. So that's just been fun to kind of do that, and some Foo Fighters and some other stuff that's like not crazy eclectic, but it's like, yeah, it hits one.
Tell me you're listening. You got a little Deftones in there too.
And some Deftones, Linkin Park, all that kind of stuff.
Have you listened to the Idols?
No.
Okay.
The Idols. Okay. I'll put that on.
I was on vacation a couple weeks ago and I met a person who does music licensing, at where we were staying.
Right.
And I asked him, I said, hey man, like, what are you listening to? And he's like, oh my gosh. And so he started name dropping some bands. He's like, have you heard the Idols? And I was like, oh, I love the Idols. So they're kind of this, I love all the kind of like post-punk, hardcore kind of noise rock. And the Idols, man, I want to go see them live. They put on a show, but they're abrasive. They're just awesome. But I also love kind of all that like old school, like stuff from like New York back in the day, the Ramones, Television, Patti Smith, all of that kind of stuff, Talking Heads and kind of that post-punk. But the new Jane's Addiction song, man, is bringing me back. And I was like, and Turnstile, a band called Turnstile. And they kind of have that early 90s kind of rock and roll. I really love them.
Yeah.
Guy kind of sounds like Perry Farrell. And I was like, and then, and I'm going to give a shout out to my friend, the new Something Corporate.
Yeah, I saw that.
The song, they just released a video.
Yeah, I was looking at that. And
it's really good. The new record's going to be out. I mean,
yeah, it's called Happy, that song.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, they're coming. I was like, I've been stumbled upon them. I'm like, wait, they're doing a new record after what, 20 years? And I'm like,
and we just saw him in Vegas in October. And man, if it's so funny because as you and I both know, so much of the music that we grew up on in our formative, our emotional days, formative.
Totally.
Hearing it a second time around. Yeah. Oh, that would have been awesome.
I was going to see him.
It's so funny because hearing them now, the songs have a wisdom and a depth that is so beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Huge.
It's amazing.
I also understand it better now, too.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
yeah, I understand it better.
Life starts at 40.
Well, there's another band, too, that oh my God, Life does start at 40. Something Corporate, I saw that. I was like, oh, that's going to be fun. But there's another band that I listen to a lot. And one sec.
Yeah, no worries.
It's like a punk. Did you ever listen to Copeland?
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
This was, because I listened to him a ton, like in early 2000s, right? And I'm on Spotify recently, just because sometimes I don't listen to every artist like I used to in like early college days, like early 2000s, like I did. But I remember really loving Copeland, and I have like actually a picture of my office still from one of their records. And this one I stumbled upon. This was I thought it was at first like a whole new record, but essentially it's like this really moody orchestral version of all of like their greatest hit songs.
I bet it's
so they're kind
good.
of they're all like redone. So when I first started listening to them, they're all kind of like like the melody is the same, but it's not like the rock, emo, punk, whatever version that they're doing it. It's this orchestral, moody, often very slow and melodic tone. So at first I didn't recognize it. I'm like, wait, I know this lyric. I'm like, oh, and I looked it up. I'm like, yeah, they essentially redid some of their favorite tracks. Really good record.
I love when artists do that.
Yeah.
And it's called reimagined.
Yes, reimagined. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for. So if you like Copeland, this is great record.
Yeah, it's so funny because like I loved all those early albums from them, and they, but here's the thing. I was a huge fan of the Pixies, and so
me too. Yeah,
that me too. So for me being 46, it's like I remember when those Pixie albums were coming out and were huge.
Yeah.
And it's like without that we wouldn't have Nirvana, the Loud Soft, and then we wouldn't have the Breeders, and then we wouldn't have Copeland, and we wouldn't have Dashboard Confessional, and any of those things. And so for me, it's like I kind of love. I hate saying this, but I kind of love being older as a music lover.
Oh yeah,
because I can go back and go through all those beautiful memories that I have, both good and bad.
Yeah, yeah. Totally.
and
Oh
that's
yeah.
the whole thing. It's like, and we grew up in the era of CDs,
Oh yeah.
and there
Oh, yeah.
was nothing worse than spending your hard-earned money on an album
Yes.
and then being like, oh my gosh, it's not good. And then you're like,
Dude, and you're
I'm going to
stuck
keep
with
listening to it.
because you
And-
have
and
to.
this-
You're like, I'm not gonna waste this.
No. And this is a perfect one. I grew up with, I remember going to see Switchfoot at Point Loma Nazarene
Oh yeah.
when they were
Yeah.
releasing, I think, their second album.
Okay.
And on the way to the concert, there was a Tower Records right off of Rosecrans in San Diego.
I know exactly where that is.
So I went in and I remember, because I love Radiohead.
Where it was. Sorry, it's closed.
Where it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Sad.
And I remember going in and getting the new Radiohead album, which was Kid A.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Great
And
album.
I remember putting it into my CD player in my car.
Did you like it or no?
And I remember driving in the dark to go see my friend's band play down in Point Loma. And I remember like the first song, and I'm just like, what is this?
It was a shift from OK Computer.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, this is radical. Niall Goodrich, who produced it, was one of my producing heroes as a sonic developer, and the way that he saw the world and the way he pushed the artist. And I just remember I was like, all right. I remember taking it out, putting in the new Switchfoot album, and I was like, all right, cool. Like, I grew up in the same area, the whole thing. And then I remember I was like, okay, like Kid A's got to live in my CD player for at least a week. And then I just remember like falling in love with it and just going,
yeah, it's a great record.
Oh my God, this is so cool. So
yeah. And I love their stuff. I have a bunch of their records. In fact, In Rainbows is up there right there. I put that on the other day. Kids are dancing to it. So
15 Steps when you
dude,
I saw them on that tour.
Yeah,
I saw them on the
tour.
On the In Rainbows tour.
Yeah,
and they opened with 15 Steps, and I just remember like going, these guys are artists at the top of their performance.
Oh yeah, they're so good.
And to pull that off live is I
agree.
It's all about that live show, and when the rubber meets the road, because we've all seen those bands where we're like, oh, this is the saddest thing. They suck. They're terrible.
Yeah, well, it's like Blink, live, fun energy, but just they can't sing for junk live, at all.
And
so,
if do you want to know a cool Blink story?
Sure. And we got to end with this because
we'll end with this. So at one time, my neighbor, I lived in an area. My neighbor was the manager of Blink-182.
Oh wow!
And they played a show in San Diego. And now, mind you, this is so random. My little sister went to the show, and this is like peak, like Dude Ranch, and then the next album. I was more of a hardcore punk rock fan, so I didn't go. And then they did not play well, and they kind of goofed off. I mean, it was in front of this packed crowd, a huge crowd, and I'll never forget this. I was talking, and this was a couple years later. I live in this area. We have a mutual friend, and he was their manager. And I was like, oh yeah, man, like they went from like kind of, having a shtick to like really being more of a powerhouse. And I said, my little sister went and saw this show, and he goes, that was the show that almost broke them. He goes, and I told him, either it's all or nothing. You better be all in.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge Travis Barker fan because he was in the Aquabats.
He's a great drummer. He's a great drummer. Yeah.
And he is like a musician's musician. I mean, you think about all those bands and all those records he's produced and played. The dude's got chops.
So much. Yeah. No, I respect. Yeah, I respect. I like Blink. I'm just saying that, sometimes live they're like, but a lot of bands are like that. They're like, okay.
Oh man, I used to see the Vandals on some of these like and I was just like, oh no, those guys.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great studio musicians in the record, but live you're like, okay, this is hard. Then you have the other bands, and we'll end with this. I remember we told you at the San Diego Open Air Theater when I saw it was Death Cab for Cutie was the headliner. Muse was playing. I think I told you about this. And that's when Muse was still not really big yet in the States. They were like they just released the record, the one with the
Was it
one they got big
Absolution?
on, Absolution.
Absolution.
So that one just came out.
Still one of, like, that
It's
record
great.
holds up like
So,
nobody's
oh, it's
business.
so good.
Production,
But
songwriting,
live
playing.
though, I mean, talk about a band live that it's almost like a Radiohead-esque, but only it's a power. It's three dudes at the time. Now I think they have a keyboardist that tours with them and stuff. But at the time, it was just them three, and how they blew my mind. I was like, just shocked. It's like this is live, like this is happening. And then Death Cab for Cutie, which I was a huge Death Cab for Cutie. I mean, massive. That's why I went to this thing for them, and I remember being very bored after Muse. And I know Death Cab's like, I get they're not like a huge uppity band anyway. I get that, but going from the shock of and adrenaline of Muse, and they really can play. Like they really
No, they're monster players.
phenomenal musicians, and everything is like vocally, everything is spot on. Like there's no, it's amazing. And then just like, oh, I'm kind of bored watching Death Cab. I want to go to sleep and leave. So anyway, Muse is another.
That's so
in fact,
funny.
I walked at my wedding. We did a Muse song, Starlight.
Oh, great song.
For the guys walking and like everyone walking up.
Yeah.
Besides
the processional.
The processional besides the wedding, my wife, she had a different song. We did the once song, Falling Slowly for her, but we did Muse Starlight. So yeah, they have a place in my heart for sure. Muse.
Oh yeah, it's and it's so funny. It's like I count myself really lucky, and you too. Like we've seen those. We got to see some of those shows. I saw Coldplay at the open air theater the week that Rush of Blood to the Head came out.
Oh wow!
And it was incredible. And I count myself lucky that I've seen a lot of really incredible shows over my lifetime.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there and going, this is a band that's going to be huge, because they weren't huge.
Yeah, not at that point. Yeah.
And I mean, they played the full first record and they played all of Rush of Blood to the Head. And I was like, and as an encore, they did Counting Up My Demons off the first album. And it was the most, I just remember like going, this is just a different level. I was like, I felt like I was getting to see U2 before they were huge.
Before they were, yeah. It's funny. I've not seen Coldplay live. And I remember getting on the Parachutes, which I have that record too. Yeah. Like I remember that when I started listening to him, it was raining in my buddy's car. He drove like an old Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I remember falling in love with that record in high school. I'm like, this is a great record. And I haven't seen them live. Oddly enough, of all the bands, I'm like, I need to see them. I know that's different now than it would have been when they were starting.
But I can tell you, they're still phenomenal.
I'm now they have all the bells and whistles and like all the extras to make it even probably 10 times better. So I definitely need to see them. But with that said, because this is, I think we were aiming at making this a shorter episode. So if you're still with us, we tried, and then we get talking about music, and I guess those that are listening are realizing how much I like music and Sam, I guess, but I'm a big music nerd, and you don't, you get one side of me, but I have other sides that you just don't know yet because I don't talk about it enough. But music, I'm a huge nerd. I'm actually a musician. I have guitars, I have amps, pedals up the wall. Yeah. And that's a whole other side of me.
What's so cool is doing this podcast with you. We get to see some of the different parts of Travis Goodman, which is truly a beautiful gift for all of us in the audience. And I just want to say, I so appreciate everything you do for all of us, the audience, the people that can, see your content, on YouTube and on TikTok and Instagram, and, not just being, someone that, is in also that space of working with humans, helping them be their best. But I just want to thank you for your contribution to all of us, because it's a labor of love. And I just want to normalize saying that, like, let's tell our friends that they're doing a good job, because a lot of us, we don't know we're doing a good job without someone else recognizing. And also, I just appreciate the person that you are, not just what you do for everyone, but just who you are, because that authenticity and that love and connection for humans shows up. And so I want to honor that, because I think we need to do that more often.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you,
And
Travis.
yeah, no, thank you. That means a lot. And I agree. We need to normalize that more, especially as men. More so. I think women do, generally speaking, a better job at that.
Yep.
And men, we need to do that more. So I appreciate that. And yeah, and I thank you for our friendship. So, hey, until our next conversation, which will be soon,
Yes.
stay tuned for the return of Sam. To be, TBD on what we're going to talk about, but it's going to be good. And again, looking for the links for Sam. We want to work with Sam, buy the book, interested. It's all clickable below. I might even link a few of the artists we talked about below that you can just click on if you're not aware of them. And until next time, thank you.
Thank you.